I like to introduce them now, starting with the earliest graduate of our panel, Mabel Stanton, from the class of 1955. She has an interesting history of participating in the 1952 Olympics in Helsinki, has been inducted into DePaul University's Athletics Hall of Fame, and has a history with the Chicago Hurricanes. So that's remarkable. Second, we have on the panel is Louis Aquila, from the, a bachelor's in 59 and his Master of Science in 1961. And fascinating part here is that he's been a faculty member at DePaul after his graduation and has worked at the university for more than 50 years. That's going to be very interesting also. And Judge Russell Hartigan, graduated from MBA 1970, is a member of the class of 1970 50th Reunion Committee and instructor at DePaul's School for Continuing Professional Studies, and was also a member of the men's basketball team. And finally, we have a current student, Rachel Lewandowski, who will graduate in 2021. And she is a student leader, and she is on the Pan-Hellenic Executive Council. So we have an interesting group of people, hear their stories, how that impacted them. And that's the reason why I became interested in this, because after learning about, the 50th reunion coming up, I thought, what has Paul done for me? And it has greatly impacted my life, my career. One of my instructors even hired me for one of my early jobs, was a mentor. And it's just been a terrific association. And my son's also a graduate of the law school. Okay. And when we get the panel going, I also have something that I wanted to bring up as a memory from DePaul, is the classroom technology that we had in 1970 at Lewis Towers, where I went to the night program in the early beginnings of the sociology department. The technology was a blackboard, a piece of chalk, and an eraser, and that was about it, and things have greatly changed. So I'm going to give you back to our wonderful Emily Littlejohn, who's Associate Director of Alumni Relations, and she'll continue from there. Thank you.
Great. Well, Ken, thank you so much for that great welcome and for sharing some of your memories with all of us today. So we're going to get started with sort of a lighter, more fun question. And maybe Rachel, if you don't mind kicking us off and just talking about, as a current student today, what you do for fun and kind of what student life is like for you.
Yeah, sure. So, well, right now, I mean, there's not much going on because everyone's kind of off campus. So I spend most of my time like on Zoom and with my friends who are still here in our like small little groups. But when things were kind of normal, we really just like went out to different parts of the city, mostly the parts that didn't cost money because we can't really afford a lot. But going to the parks, going to the lakefront, just kind of like exploring around. And I'm fortunate enough that like Chi Omega, the sorority I'm in, plans a lot of events that we can all do together. So other than that, I'm usually just like in the library.
Awesome. Great. Well, maybe Judge Hartigan, if you wouldn't mind then sharing some of your memories about being a DePaul student and what you all did for fun.
So are we to believe you're always in the library?
Honestly, like a majority of my time has been spent there.
All right. We won't put you under oath.
It's okay if you do. All of my friends do for sure.
I'm sure. What did we do for fun? Well, a lot of the activity downtown, the Lewis Center, Elevators are always an issue. They're still an issue. But on the fourth floor, every sorority and fraternity had a designated table. So you would go to that table during breaks between classes and see what's happening. It was really the social hub of DePaul if you were downtown. Now things were different up on the Lincoln Park campus. So that was kind of the fun thing to do, is talk to people. I was in 2 fraternities. We talked about obviously dating, parties that were on the weekend. We talked about DePaul basketball, and we had intramural sports, which were always very competitive. Football, tag football, basketball, softball were really something. So those are all neat things that we talked about. And a lot of the students were first generation, Polish, Italian, Irish, on and on. And the first time that their son or daughter had attended school, because they did not go to college, the parents. So it was unique in that regard. We called downtown the vertical campus. You think about that. It's all about elevators. But we had fun.
Great, thank you. And I know we'll talk about this in a little bit too, but I think DePaul's student body and the number of first generation students that we have and that we've always tried to serve is certainly something that translates back from when you graduated in 1970 through till today. So now Mabel, maybe if you want to unmute yourself and share a little bit about your experiences on the basketball team and what you did for fun. There you go, Mabel.
Well, I was a guard on girls' basketball team, and we had a lot of fun practicing. Ray Meyer's daughter was also on the team, so we got a lot of opportunities to speak to him, and he gave us a lot of pointers. That was a lot of fun. And also, I was invited to become a member of the Phi Delta Pi sorority. I was the only Black girl on the invited, and I had a wonderful time. We did all the crazy sorority things, and it was fun.
Awesome. Thank you all. Next question, and I think we'll all kind of chime in here, is what is your favorite memory from your time at DePaul? And Lou, if you want to get us started off for that one.
Yeah, sure. Well, I actually have 2. Going to basketball games in Alumni Hall was really an exciting thing, and very crowded, lots of noise and great excitement. And I looked forward to going to those games. And I went to the games for many years after graduating. And then the other fun thing, the other memory is socializing with my friends in the basement lunchroom of Alumni Hall. This is before the current student center. In fact, when I started at DePaul in the fall of 1955, Alumni Hall was still under construction. So guess what? The only place to eat lunch on the Lincoln Park campus was in a Quonset hut that the military used for ROTC training. We had no lunchroom on the Lincoln Park campus. So that's how primitive it was when I started as a freshman at DePaul. But it still sufficed. I managed to get my lunch every day. And but after that, when Alumni Hall opened, it was great having lunch with all your friends down in the basement. As someone said about downtown with the fraternity and sorority tables, I believe it was Judge Russell, we had the same situation on the Lincoln Park campus. So if you belonged to a frat or a sorority, you had designated tables. If you didn't, you sat wherever. And so it was a very, very warm environment down in that dark basement.
That's great. Awesome. Judge Hardigan, maybe if you want to also share one of your favorite DePaul memories.
Obviously the professors there were wonderful. Some of the priests that were there, Father Minogue, wonderful man, head of the golf team, just a great guy. Father Fitzgerald, Father Munster, a real wonderful man. I think at one point he was head of DePaul, and Father Richardson was head of DePaul. And I was able to interact with all of them, and they're just wonderful people. As far as memories, one thing, I took a course after graduating. It was the geography of Chicago. We went on a boat in Lake Michigan. A fog came in, and we had nuns in our class. And all of a sudden, we didn't know where we were out in Lake Michigan. And I looked over, and the nuns are saying the rosary. And so I said, "Do you have another rosary on you?" That was quite an event. But fortunately, they didn't have a compass. They didn't have any radar, and we didn't know where we were. That was kind of a fun thing, in a weird way. When we graduated, we had protesters on the campus at the commencement. Protesters disrupted our graduation commencement exercise, which was totally out of the blue. They did get booed because, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of first generation parents were there, and that didn't go over real well. It's a Vietnam protest, and it was rather unusual, to say the least. And so those were things I remember. I remember a lot of students, if they had a bad day, they went across the street, Jackson Boulevard. There was a little bar, and they bet on Bozo Circus if the kid would bounce the ball into the bucket. I shouldn't be talking about that, but if they had a bad day, they go over and have a beer. Protesters on Michigan Avenue. I was there in '68, and you could walk one block and see all the action. You could see what was being done to the police and what the police were doing to the protesters, and you could smell the tear gas. I guess that's not a fun thing either. But those are things that I recall. A lot of us worked or played basketball. Many worked part-time, so they didn't hang around too often.
Great. And then Mabel, if maybe you want to share one of your favorite DePaul memories and unmute yourself. Perfect.
All right. I'll hold this down. Well, this was St. Patty's Day, and on that day, the entire school would go to the pub across the street to have a green beer. Well, I went with him this day, and we lined up, and the attendant was letting everyone in, and when he came to me, he said, "No, you can't go in." And I was fortunate enough to have the head of the student government behind me. So he spoke up and said, "If Mabel doesn't go in, none of us are." And at that, he let me in. So I will always remember that.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that story. And Rachel, do you want to wrap us up here and maybe share some of your favorite memories from your current time at DePaul?
Yeah, sure. I'm not 100% sure if some of them have even happened yet because I still got a couple months left. But some of my favorite times so far have been whenever we get like all the fraternities and sororities together, and it doesn't happen too often, but whenever we're able to do like bigger social events, it's probably been like the best experiences I've had because it allows me to like get outside of everybody that I see constantly all the time. I feel like I'm always seeing the same people, especially in my classes and just like in my sorority. So being on Panhell and like going to do those events, we'll like play a bunch of different card games, board games, usually like in the student center or in JTR. And that's probably like some of the best experiences I've had. And then afterwards, a lot of us will kind of like walk down to Sheffield and Webster and head to Kelly's and some of like the best times I've had the past 4 years have been at Kelly's for sure. All of us like just get together, and usually it's like on Wednesday nights and we're just all drinking, and it's when I see and run into the most people.
Can I interject something?
Mhm.
Rachel just mentioned Kelly's. Well, Kelly's was there when I was a student, but it was Kelly's father that was running the place, and Kelly was about 2 years older than I, going to DePaul University. Now, Kelly is very mature, the son. I guess the father's probably passed away. So now the son is ready to retire, and I hope there's a Kelly the third ready to take it over. Had some great times in Kelly's drinking beer with some of my friends. So Rachel, nothing new.
Could I add something though? It was a great spot to go to before a basketball game, if of course if you weren't playing. And a wonderful spot after the game. My son went to Marquette. I hate to mention that, but I'm just kidding. But it was a great rivalry, and a lot of times Marquette and DePaul fans would go to Kelly's afterwards and interact, and it was a fun place.
Yeah, and one more little memory that jogged my memory right now. It's actually where I met my wife-to-be in Kelly's.
Great.
So I'm 100% Italian, and guess what? My wife's 100% Irish. So I married a Dwyer.
I have some friends who they hope that they meet like their future partner at Kelly's. Like that's what they want to happen.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing. Moving on to our next question. I'm going to ask, during your time at DePaul, did you participate in any service activities or initiatives to give back to the local community? And if so, could you share some of those experiences? So Rachel, maybe if you want to start us off.
Sure. So at DePaul on the Panhellenic board, I'm like the VP of operations. So I'm in charge of doing community service events like for the Panhellenic community. And before COVID happened, me and the community service like chairs in all of the fraternities and sororities started creating events for everyone to go to, because before that, everyone had like their own individual philanthropy or community service that they did. So everyone was kind of like segregated in their spot that they were supposed to be volunteering at and donating to. So we did that so we could all kind of get together and do one of those group things that I was kind of talking about earlier. And since COVID, because we can't really go out and do community service, I've like separated our budget so that we have space for making donations. And everyone in the community is able to fill out an Excel spreadsheet and pick where they would like the Panhellenic e-board to donate to.
That's awesome. That's really cool and an interesting perspective on what it looks like to volunteer during COVID. Lewis, if you also want to maybe touch on that question, and also maybe share some of your insights into, as a faculty member, what it looks like to work at a university that's mission-driven.
Would you repeat the last part to me again, Emily?
Yeah, absolutely. So during your time at DePaul, did you participate in any service activities or initiatives to give back to the local community? I know we had talked somewhat about the work that some of your fraternity pledges had done. And then also maybe as a faculty member, what it's like to work at a university that's mission driven.
Well, the one memory that comes back to me most vividly is when I was let me see, I think I was a senior, and I had some friends that were 2 years younger, so they would have been sophomores, and they decided to start a new fraternity, and they asked me to participate. So I thought that was kind of cool. So we formed a new fraternity. At that time, it was called Tau Delta Epsilon. And turned out to become the first treasurer of the fraternity. And what we decided was, rather than have the pledges do silly, crazy things, we decided to have them contribute their time to the Sisters of Charity down the street from us, I believe up on Halsted. And so all our pledges did acts of charity for the Sisters of Charity. So that's my most vivid memory of providing service to the community. And today, I think things have changed quite a bit. I don't really recall that much student activism when in the 50s. Maybe Mabel remembers more than I do, but I noticed that, with the protesting during Vietnam, and I had a student who was very active in the protesting, and she literally was driving the administration nuts. But she turned out to be a wonderful, wonderful student and alumnus of the university, friends of several presidents, still very active with DePaul. And even to this day, we have remained very close friends. And our friendship started in 1967 when she was taking the calculus course from me. But I've noticed more activism on the campus, especially Lincoln Park, because most of my time is on Lincoln Park campus today than back in the 50s when I was there. Students are more engaged, they're more socially aware. There's more going on. Like one thing that would have been unheard of in the 50s, probably even in the 70s, is what's going on, for example, with DePaul. And for example, they have a program in gender studies. They welcome openly people of different persuasions. And the gender study program would never have existed back in the 50s. My God, the administration refused to allow women to wear slacks in the 50s. If you were a woman, it was a skirt or you didn't go to school. That's how strict it was. So much has changed. And I admire DePaul for their flexibility, considering when I was there, probably, I can't even pick a number, but a very high percentage of the students were Roman Catholic. I mean, there was a Jewish element at the school. DePaul always had open door policy, especially in the early decades of the 30s. There was a lot of anti-Semitism, but DePaul was always open to Jewish students, which I've always admired because even though I'm Christian, I do have several Jewish cousins in my family. And DePaul has had an open door policy, and maybe some of you don't know it. DePaul is the first private school in Illinois to accept women in the early 1900s. So DePaul has always been very open-minded, and that's something I really appreciate about the school. Emily, I think I've said enough.
Great, that was perfect. Awesome. So then transitioning to our next question. So one thing, as you've kind of touched on, the DePaul community's certainly become increasingly diverse over the course of the university's history. So maybe if you wouldn't mind expanding upon sort of what the student body looked like when you were a student, Lewis. And then Rachel, if you'll share a little bit about diversity and inclusion and some of the initiatives that take place on campus today. Did you hear me okay, Lewis? Would you mind talking a little bit about what the student body looked like when you were a student?
Oh, I'm sorry, you were talking to me?
I was, I'm sorry.
Oh, I just finished rambling and you're going to let me ramble some more?
We're just going to ask you to expand on.
Okay, all right.
What the body looks like.
Mabel mentioned something about being a student in the early 50s. Is that correct, Mabel? Well, when I was on the Lincoln Park campus, I was an undergraduate on the Lincoln Park campus, and I believe the judge mentioned this about the student composition, basically German, Polish, Irish, Italian. I can't remember on the Lincoln Park campus one black student. And it's not because I'm sure DePaul would have rejected a black student, but I don't remember any black students. I don't remember any Latino students. It was a commuter school. I lived at home. All my friends lived at home. I don't know if there were any students at DePaul outside of the metropolitan Chicagoland area back in the 50s. It was strictly a blue-collar school, but it afforded a wonderful education. My father never finished high school. He's first-generation Italian. 3 of my grandparents were from Italy. So I was the first one to go to college in my family. And so it was a blue-collar school. And guess what? It was affordable. Parents could afford to send their children to school. Of course, I had to work in summers, and I believe, as Judge mentioned, about working after school, but most of my work was in the summer full-time. And I, as an educator today, feel tremendous empathy for students that have to suffer working full-time, trying to squeeze in an education full-time, and the pressure on them. I don't believe we had that kind of pressure on us when we were going to school. So that's then. So the thing that impresses me about the DePaul today is how inclusive it is. When I was a student, and I'm just mentioning this in passing, there was a crucifix in every classroom because it was a Catholic school. I don't see crucifixes in the classroom anymore because our population is so divergent. I have Muslim students. I have a student this summer from Saudi Arabia taking my remote class online. We have students from around the world. I've had several students from Japan, from Sweden, etc. when I taught for the School for New Learning a bunch of years ago. So DePaul is becoming very cosmopolitan and worldly, and it's expanding. It's nothing like the little tiny school that I went to back in the 50s. I'm sure Mabel can attest to how tiny it was. In fact, when I started at DePaul, there were 2 buildings on the Lincoln Park campus, the Liberal Arts Building and the Science Building, and no alumni hall even. In downtown, we rented space, 64 East Lake Street. We had no building downtown in 55. So the university has changed dramatically over the years from a little tiny school, commuting school, to a school with dorms, a wonderful new music school, theater school. I'm totally amazed at the growth of DePaul since I started in 55. And I'll just say one other little tidbit. Not only did I start at 55 at DePaul, I started in 51 at DePaul Academy. I've been in that neighborhood since 1951. That's 69 years. Do you think I know that neighborhood? I think I'm done, Emily.
Sounds good. Well, Rachel, maybe if you want to talk a little bit about your experiences at DePaul today, and I know you've been involved in some different diversity and inclusion initiatives within Greek life as well.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis kind of took the words out of my mouth. It's very diverse here, and I talk to my friends at state schools now, and everything here is in Chicago at DePaul is completely different than what most of my friends are experiencing. And it's really quite amazing. And on the Greek life side of things, it doesn't, it's not the same. If you look at Panhell, it's not as diverse as the like student body is. And that's one thing that we've been trying to fix, especially this year, and make better. So on like in the next few weeks, we actually hired a diversity and inclusion speaker to come in and give a keynote address for when intent doesn't equal impact for the Panhellenic body and for all of the girls. It's kind of required for them to come to it and see this, especially in the wake of everything that's going on.
Well, thank you for sharing. Moving on to our next question, and kind of on a similar note. So how have you connected with activism and responded to the question, what must be done throughout your life? So Judge Hartigan, if maybe you want to get us started with that. Oh, and it looks like Judge Hartigan, you're muted.
There I am. He must have heard me in the background. Activism, I got involved in our community. I was a trustee of our village, trustee of the township, and president of the mental health board. And we had a $5 million budget. Most all of that was unpaid, but it was all good. And my father was active with the various service groups, Kiwanis and Lions, as part of his job. But I saw his activity. He also got a Silver Beaver from the Blind Boy Scouts. Silver Beaver is the highest award you can get from the Boy Scouts, and he got it. So I saw that, and I became active, and I became president of the Illinois State Bar, which is 65,000 members statewide. I put people on various committees, got them involved, and also president of the Bar Foundation, where we distributed money to lawyers who have physical problems, mental problems, and also been involved with Pillars. Pillars is a huge community-based group. My wife and I both were on the board there. So you do have to get active. You do have to help people too. I've been a mentor at DePaul for students, written a lot of letters to get them into law school. And by the way, I'm a double demon. I think he had my credentials wrong. I'm undergrad BSc Commerce, then I'm MBA. So I spent a lot of time down on Lewis Center. And I have to add, my son is JD. He's at the law school at DePaul, graduated. And my other son, MBA program, DePaul. So we got three demons and the double demon. Activism is important, especially as a lawyer, to be active in your community. And I enjoyed all my activity, even in the township. I was township supervisor of 17 communities and over, about 85,000 people. No, 125,000 people. So most of this is unpaid. And it's neat to be involved, especially in the mental health board, where I presided as president with a $5 million budget, helping people who have mental health issues.
Great. And no, Mabel, if maybe you want to unmute yourself as well. And I know you have a story that you wanted to share about your experience starting the first Chicago Hurricanes team and talking about that.
Yes. Well, I think I was about 18 years old, and I attended my first national track meet, which was in Odessa, Texas. And the CYO sponsored me. I was an independent because, as you know, they did not have a girls' track and field team at DePaul at that time. Well, the coach, he purchased a compartment for me so that I could, it was a 2-day ride to Odessa. So he wanted to make sure I got my rest, but it was so lonesome and boring that I attempted to go through the 20 coaches where my coach was, and, just to sit with him, for company. And of course he was upset. He says, "Mabel, go back to your room. You need your rest." Well, I did. And I laid across the bed, and next thing I knew, there was banging on the door. and it was the conductor. And he said, Mabel, you have to leave the room because we just crossed the Mason-Dixon line. Well, I was glad to leave the room, but when I finally got through the 20 coaches where my coach was, he was visibly upset. He said, go back. He says, oh my God. Well, anyway, we proceeded on to Odessa. Well, I had a beautiful experience. I had won the 50-meter dash, the 100-meter dash, the long jump. And after that, the 5 girls, Hurricane girls from Chicago, came up to me and asked me if they could join my team. I said, team? I don't have a team. I run by myself. And they said, oh, please, Mabel, ask your coach. So I did. I asked the coach, and he says, Mabel, you know we don't have any money, but wait until I get back to Chicago. So when we got back to Chicago, he reported it to the CYO, and they sued the Illinois Central Railroad for putting me out the room. And we got enough money to invite the Hurricane girls, for all white girls, to join me, and we became the first interracial track team for women in the Midwest.
Thank you for sharing that story. I appreciate you being on here and talking through everything like that with us. On to our next question. What is one thing that you wish DePaul students knew about your experience today? And Jeff, again, if you want to kick us off with that. And then after that, Rachel, if you want to share one thing that you wish that alumni knew about your DePaul experience today.
I'm sorry. I think the most important thing is many of us came from humble backgrounds. Our parents were hardworking people. A lot of them didn't go to college. And it meant a lot to graduate from a university like DePaul. You made the most of what DePaul gave you. And many of us worked hard, studied, played basketball. We did many things. We were always busy. And because of that, I've stayed active with DePaul in their basketball program, also teaching at DePaul. It's been an honor to teach at DePaul. The many students I've encountered. And DePaul gave that spirit to me. And so I'm a big DePaul fan. A lot of times I ask students, how do you enjoy DePaul? I can tell you almost 100% they say, we love being a student at DePaul. And I tell them right back, I said, I enjoyed it too. I'm glad you are feeling that way because I'm still teaching at DePaul. And I like to hear that. And I'm a big basketball fan of DePaul and go through all the games and all that. So my experiences at DePaul, again, coming from the west side of Chicago, and like I said, many of us we didn't come with a silver spoon in our mouth. We didn't have really a campus life, so to speak, like being at Iowa or Indiana, where they have beautiful rolling terrain and campuses. My campus was an elevator. And sometimes they didn't work either. But it's basically, it's a wonderful experience. We have a big alumni base in DePaul, and I run into a lot of people. In fact, today at lunch, I ran into a judge, retired, and he said, where'd you go? I said, I went to DePaul. I said, where'd you go? He said, I went to DePaul. I said, we're both DePaul undergrad in both business. So there is a lot of camaraderie with respect to that. And so I take DePaul and I've given that to my son, who's a lawyer, my other son who's making way too much money in finance. He's also DePaul MBA. So we've all had great experiences at DePaul.
Great. And then Rachel, like you said, if you want to talk a little bit about what you would want alumni who are joining us on the call to know about your experience as a student today.
Yeah, I mean, like from what it sounds like, it seems like so much has changed, but so much has stayed the same. I know that everyone, all of my friends, especially me, like absolutely loves being here. I came all the way from Pittsburgh to come here, and I feel like I'm just surrounded by people from California and Florida and a lot of suburb kids too. But so much has changed too with activism, and like Lewis was talking about, the diversity from then to now is just, you walk onto the campus and you see so many different people, so many people practicing different religions, people of many different genders, things that I would have never thought about experiencing or at all when I was planning on coming to college, especially in Chicago. And I'm sure stuff like that and things like that are completely different than what it was then.
Great. Well, we will bring it to our last question then. And since we only have about 3 minutes left and we want to save some time at the end for some audience interaction, if everyone just wants to share one quick thing, if kind of like a last final thought. And Lewis or Lou, do you want to maybe start us off?
Well, this is kind of personal, but I have 2 lifelong friendships that started at DePaul, actually the academy. 2 of my dearest friends, Tony and Ken, and we all decided to go to the university, and we are still actively friends after all these years going back. I don't think we met in our first year in high school. We met in our second year, so we were talking 1952. So since 1952, we're still friends. And that's all due to us meeting through DePaul University and the academy. So friendships, many, many friendships at DePaul. I think that's the thing I would like to share is build some friendships and hopefully nurture them so they last a lifetime. Good friends are hard to come by. If you get one good friend in your life, you're lucky. That is my parting word. Those are my parting words.
Thank you for that. And Mabel, is there anything else that you'd want to share?
Yes. Am I on? Yes.
Yep, you're on.
If you're ever in the streets of Chicago behind one of the DePaul buildings, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the streets. There are pillows of outstanding people who attended DePaul, and I am happy to say I am also honored that I am on one of the pillars in the streets of Chicago behind the university. So if you're ever in that area, please go over and read a little bit about them. Thank you.
Yes, and if anyone wants more information about those pillars, we'll also be including some new videos and some new stories about the pillars in our post-event email, so you all can keep an eye on that towards the end of next week. Judge Hartigan, any final thoughts?
He's muted.
DePaul, I'd like to say DePaul has molded me, helped me with my character, my work ethic, my study habits, and I got down to business. No fooling around. You got the future ahead of you. I wanted to make sure I had good grades, and they allowed me, some of the better professors, to do so. I cherish those years. Also, I hope I left my mark on many students where I've taught at the SNL for more than 30 years. And I still keep in touch with some of them because I also was an advisor to many students who are entering the MBA program, which I did, or the law program, which I did also. So I think that it's important that I'm a big cheerleader for DePaul, and I hope that that continues, and I will still stay active teaching as well as going to basketball games.
Great, thank you. And then Rachel, do you want to wrap it up for us?
Sure. I guess I just want to say that I'm really grateful for being on the panel today and like seeing everybody's different perspectives from DePaul, especially because mine is so drastic from yours and very different now and then 50 years ago. So I really appreciate being able to see that through your guys' eyes.
Great, well, thank you. We are going to go ahead and you'll be getting notifications that says a few of you have been promoted to panelists. So once you see that, if you're interested, you're welcome to turn your video on to wave to some of the other folks that are on this call. You also should be I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone just for now. But if you'd like to unmute yourself, just raise your hand and we can handle questions by using the raised hand option, and then I'll unmute you and you can go ahead and ask your question, or if you just want to say hi and share a story, you're welcome to do that as well. Anybody with a question or a thought or just something they want to share? Carol, I'll go ahead and unmute you.
Jesus. I was just waving at my friend. And that's Ginny. Oh, and there's Francine too.
Perfect. Well, that's great for this too. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions or memories that they want to share with the rest of the panel?
Are they letting other people on?
Mm-hmm.
Nope, just some friendly faces.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Bill. It's good to see you. It's
good to be seen. Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed this session, and I sit here listening to so many of these comments, and they are so consistent with my perspective, my background, where we came from. I was clearly a member of that family, and I didn't even realize it. You know, the first generation, the ethnic backgrounds, where the parents came from. We were commuters, we were workers, and DePaul opened the door to an extraordinary life. I forget who said it, but I grew up on the west side of Chicago, behind a grocery store, and you know, the way life had turned out with a lot of work. I wish my folks had lived long enough to see how life turned out for one of their sons. But again, it resonates with what I heard this afternoon, and it has made me feel so proud of where I went to school and what it's become. And yes, it's changed immensely from when I was there, but I have thoroughly enjoyed this session. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you for joining us as well. And Francine, it looks like you want to chime in, so we'll unmute you as well.
Thank you, Emily. I just wanted to say, having been a part of the committee, thank you all for joining us, the small but dedicated group. I have so many fond memories of the university, but the one that resonates with me throughout my life is I learned early on, in company with primarily the Vincentian priests, that I was dedicated to a life of service. And though I have gone on and I got my undergraduate degree and went on to the law school and practiced law for 45 years, it's always been with the overarching notion of being in service. I thought after I finally retired from the law in 2017, that would be the end of it, only to be called to then work for the Daughters of Charity, which is the sister group for the Vincentian Fathers. And what it has finalized for me in my life, in addition to the notion of service, is that I'm a Vincentian. I love it. That's the way I describe myself. It's the way I hope that I carry myself. And I hope that I transition into the next life as. So, and again, thank you all so much for being on the call and for joining us. And Lou, it's great to see you, dear.
Great. Yeah, Paul, we can go ahead and unmute you if you want to chime in as well.
Okay, can you hear me?
You can, yep.
Okay, well, I thought I'd share, it was great being a part of the committee, but one of my greatest DePaul memories, and I went there undergraduate, liberal arts and law school in 1970. One of my proudest moments was well after I graduated in 1979, and I don't know if anyone else on the committee, perhaps Russ was there, but I saw DePaul play the basketball team in the Final Four out in Salt Lake City. And while they did not win the tournament, it felt great to be and to shout out, "We are DePaul" out there, and have some great times over the years, well after graduation, enjoying watching DePaul basketball, and hoping that maybe with the new AD we can get some, maybe get back to the tournament again. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you especially to our panelists who joined us and shared their experiences at DePaul. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you all sometime again this weekend with our virtual programming. But certainly I hope we'll see everyone at some point in 2021 when it's safe for us to host our 50-year club luncheon in person on campus.